People to say, okay, ping pong, I get this.
That's next, as Game On continues. Now, back to Game On, the unauthorized history of video games.
A quarter, 25 cents. That's all it took to escape all that for this, Pong, the first video game to become a hit.
It took something like a Pong, you know, a nice little wood cabinet with a flat top, and you could put your beer on there to enable people to say, okay, ping pong, I get this.
Nolan Bushnell got it before anybody else. He's the guy who made it all happen, and in the process started an entirely new industry.
He was the first one to figure out how to market it. He looked at it not as a novelty, but as a new genre.
Remember Space War, the original computer game invented at MIT? As an engineering student at the University of Utah, Bushnell was sneaking into the school's computer lab to play it every chance he got. And as he played, he saw opportunity knocking.
Coincidentally, I was manager of the games department at an amusement park, Summers. It was obvious to me that if I had this in my arcades, they'd make a lot of money.
Bushnell took the idea with him as he moved from Utah to Silicon Valley to work as an engineer at Ampex. Using spare parts from work and a used television, he built a coin-operated version of Space War in 1971. The result was Computer Space, the very first arcade video game. As beautiful as it looked, it was a dud.
It was too esoteric. I mean, it made a lot of money around college campuses. It just made no money at all in a beer bar.
Still, Bushnell wasn't ready to declare game over. Instead, he left Ampex and formed a company that would design video games for coin-op manufacturers like Bally and Midway. For the name of his new company, he borrowed a term from the Japanese board game Go, Atari. It means prepare to be attacked. But no one at Atari was prepared for the game that would put the new company on the map. It all started when Bushnell hired a young engineer named Al Alcorn and gave him an exercise to get his feet wet in game design.
The idea was to build a video game that was the simplest possible thing you could think of. So I just went to the Walgreens drugstore and bought a $75 black and white TV.
Bushnell and Alcorn called the game Pong and installed the first Pong machine for a trial run at this bar in Sunnyvale, California, then known as Andy Capp's Tavern. What happened next made Andy Capp's the Los Alamos, the Cape Canaveral of the video game industry.
One day, within the first week, I got a call in the evening saying the machine stopped playing, and could I come down and fix it because I got customers that want to play the game. So I drove down to Sunnyvale and went to see the machine, opened the coin box up, and this big fistful of quarters just gushed out of the machine. All of a sudden, we had a real hit on our hands.
All Nolan Bushnell needed now was a workforce to manufacture the game.
I thought that the way you did it is you went down to the California unemployment office and you said, send me up some workers. I didn't realize that all you got were drug addicts and dope dealers when you did that.
We got some pretty colorful people, some parolees, and yeah, we had some issues, but the company survived those problems and went on to create a kind of a culture that's kind of permeated the valley.
We had a very, very young workforce.
And we'll see our supplies.
We soon found also that they were really more interested in a party than they were in raises or bonuses. And so we would set a quota, and if they hit a quota, we'd have a beer bust on the back dock. We were constantly hitting quota, therefore we had a lot of beer busts.
And there was plenty of money to pay for all those kegs. Within a year, Atari was raking in $1 million from the sales of Pong. But along came another company who wanted to take the wind out of those sales.
Odyssey by Magnavox.
Magnavox and Ralph Baer, the inventor of its Odyssey home video game system, thought that Nolan Bushnell's Pong looked amazingly like their ping pong game. And not by chance.
They were able to prove that Nolan Bushnell had gone to a closed Magnavox trade show, that he had in fact even played on an Odyssey.
Sure enough, there in the trade show's guest register was Bushnell's signature. Rather than face a lawsuit that could have ended Atari, Bushnell settled with Magnavox. But now Atari faced competition of its own as scores of other companies began making rip-offs of Pong.
So the way you stay ahead was to invent the next game. So you'd have that for a while until they copied it.
Atari brought out one arcade hit after another. Asteroids, Battle Zone, Lunar Lander, and a game invented by a hippie kid named Steve Jobs. Yes, the Steve Jobs.
He really was out there in left field with very strange ideas about diet and water and air and a few other things.
But the game that Jobs and his pal Steve Wozniak created became one of Atari's biggest hits, Breakout. Within a few years, Jobs and Wozniak would break out of Atari to form a little company called Apple.
And he wanted me to invest. And I could have had a third of Apple Computer for $50,000. I kind of regretted that.
Actually, Bushnell had enough on his plate running Atari. Every moment of his day was dedicated to finding ways to stay ahead of the competition.
Strong piece of stuff.
The answer, he thought, would be a home version of Pong. Unfortunately, no one else seemed to think so.
We went to the toy fair in New York, presented the first Pong, sold none. Zero.
But then the largest retailer in the world in the 1970s came to the rescue. Sears. They put the home version of Pong in their 1975 Christmas catalog. 150,000 home Pong machines were sold just during the holiday season alone.
Once upon a time, you could give a kid a top and a jump rope for Christmas, or perhaps a small doll. Not anymore.
Within a year, there were 75 companies making their own home video game machines. To stay ahead of them, Bushnell had an idea for a state-of-the-art game console that was actually a computer. What he didn't have was the money to manufacture it.
I did a calculation how much it was going to cost me to raise the capital and the uncertainty. And I felt that the best thing to do was to sell the company.
And so, in 1976, Bushnell sold Atari to Warner Communications for $28 million.
We thought Warner Communications understood the hit business, the hit music business, the hit movie business, and would understand that some games don't work and some games do. So that was the choice. At the time, it seemed like a great deal.
At first, everything at Atari was the same. As chairman of the board, Bushnell was still coming up with new ideas. Like a chain of restaurants where kids could play video games. Yes, Nolan Bushnell is also the father of Chuck E. Cheese.
Children the world over are the same. They like fun, food, entertainment, and games.
It was a secret trick to open up new locations to sell more video games, is what that was about. Absolutely brilliant. Worked great. Except the pizza was never very good. The engineers didn't make very good pizza.
But the honeymoon between Warner Communications and Nolan Bushnell ended quicker than you can say pepperoni, especially after Warner brought in a former textile executive named Ray Kassar to keep an eye on its new company. By then, Atari had brought out its new game console, the VCS, also known as the 2600, the machine that was supposed to keep the company on top. But after a slow start, Bushnell lost faith in the VCS and tried to get Warner to drop it.
I basically told them that they were a bunch of idiots, and you don't say that to executives.
So they said, you know, Nolan, we're tired of you. Go away.
In 1979, Warner Communications fired Nolan Bushnell